Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody joining us today. Thank you so much for joining today's presentation, which is going to be a UDP technical overview and demo. My name is Mary Owen, and I'm going to be helping out our host today. That is the one and only Stacy Budd, who is one of our principal consultants. So as we're going through this, we do want to hear your questions, so please do send them to us using the question section of the interface, and we will get to as many of those as we can at the end of the event. Today's webcast is also being recorded, and so we'll be sending out an email with a link to the recording to the address you registered with shortly. So with that out of the way, take it away, Stacy.
All right, thank you, Mary, and hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about our Unified Data Protection product. We recently had a new release of this product, an update to it, 6.5. So we're going to talk not only about what UDP in general does, but we'll talk about some of the marquee features and some of the things in the 6.5 release that are pretty important there as well. If you're not familiar with Arcserve as a company, right? Arcserve has a long-standing history. It's been around for, I think it's about 27 years as far as a product goes. And, you know, I've touched it a lot of that time, so I worked with a good portion of that time. So if you're not familiar, right, we have a worldwide presence, presence in over 150 countries, a large customer base, large partner base, all kinds of things, people out there to help you if you do need assistance from a partner standpoint as far as that goes. We, of course, about, I think it's 2.5 years ago now, I think it's approaching close to 3 years now. We're a little ways away from that still, but we actually broke off and became an independent company, right? So that has come with a lot of recognition, right, in the industry. We are able to focus 100% on what we do, which is backup and disaster recovery. So, no longer do we, are we part of a larger company. It's been a really great ride. I've been, part of this through the whole transition and, standalone and all of that. And I can just tell you that the speed of development and things like that has just been, phenomenal as far as that goes. So it's fantastic. We do offer the product, in multiple ways. We do have software solutions, we have appliances, we have a cloud presence, for like disaster recovery as a service and those kind of things, and that's what our development goes to, is to specifically those kind of things. Again, if you're not familiar with Arcserve and what we do, we're backup and disaster recovery, company with spanning, over 20 years of, knowledge and experience in that space. What we've done in the past, traditional Arcserve backup was, a file-based approach, usually used to go to tape. And as the industry and everything and technology has changed, a lot of people are looking to go to disk and more of an image-based solution, and that's where Unified Data Protection comes into play. Doesn't mean we've turned our back on our Arcserve backup customers. We still have a big user base for that, so we still support those users. But what we see now is most customers wanting to go to the benefits of the faster image-based backup solutions, which give you a ton more of restore capabilities, as well as increasing speed and those kind of things as well. We have a big, push to unify, what we do, right? So whether or not you're backing up, you're restoring, you're protecting physical or virtual environment, right? We want to make that as unified as possible. Okay. We also want to make it as simple as possible. So when we usually come out with a new feature or something like that, we try to keep that down to about 4 steps within our interface, 4 or 5 steps in order to do that. We do bring some enterprise class capability down into the mid to small business market. Right, our focus is more of a mid-market focus, but we do bring, a lot of enterprise class functionality down to that space, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I did speak about the, the offerings, both software, hardware, and cloud offerings that we have out there to be able to help you protect those environments, or whatever makes most sense for your environment. When we look at unified data protection, right? Again, simple, fast, that's what we're looking for, right? Is to try to give you the ability to protect your environment, without having to, have a dedicated person, hopefully, to work with backups, because we understand that those days are probably gone, except for the enterprises, right? So most companies, they have one person that wears multiple hats. So we want to make that experience as quick and easy for those folks out there as possible. We do provide both, support for backing up physical and virtual machines. On the virtual side, we support VMware and Hyper-V and Agentless perspective when we do this through a central management console, unified management console as well. Some of the key features we offer, like deduplication, encryption, compression, the ability to do DR, things like instant VM, right, that we'll be talking about here as well as including, the ability to back up, a multitude of OSs, and hypervisors and different things like that as well. One of the big stories is also how we scale, right? So from the smallest customers out there, we have some customers just 1 or 2 workstations that would use our product. All right, and that would be perfectly fine. That their experience with UDP is not going to change, right? It's going to be pretty much the same. Will they need all the same features and functionality? Of course not, right, as far as that goes. Maybe in a few server environments, they start to roll out some of the advanced features that are within the product, and then as they go and they grow into like remote sites and different things like that, they still have that same experience throughout UDP, for that, right? So that their overall of creating backups, doing restores is going to be the same, whether or not they're backing up physical, virtual, Windows, Linux, workstations, servers, you name it, right? It's gonna be pretty much the same. So we work very well in small environments, and we scale up very well to larger environments as well. The Unified Management Console is going to give you the ability to go in and, through one interface, work with everything, look at your logs. And not only that, and what I hope to show you when we do the demo, I'm going to skip this slide relatively quick, but what I hope to show you what I hope to show you in the demo is more of an ease of use, right? So 90% of what we do is not only going to be in the console, really everything we do is going to be in the console, but it's also going to be in one section of the console, right? We're not going to send you to different areas based on what you want to do, right? Whether you're going to back up, whether you're going to restore, perform disaster recovery, we're going to keep you in one section so that you don't have to try to learn, not only multiple consoles, but multiple sections of consoles, right? We don't want that to be your experience. We do take a plan-based kind of approach. The best way I heard this explained, years ago when we went to this approach was kind of, imagine, that you go on a trip, right? Your plan is the trip, right? You're gonna go to whatever state, whatever country, whatever, and then as part of that trip, you start to have, different tasks that you want to do. You want to plan your travel. You want to plan your, your car rental or whatever you might do. And it's the same with us, right? So our first step is always going to be, the type of backup that you want to perform. And then the next tasks are going to be, do you want to do any replication? Do you want to do any DR, disaster recovery tasks on top of that? Do you want to, copy off to different types of media, up to cloud, all these different tasks that you would add on to that as you go, right? So that's kind of our approach, and it keeps it kind of straightforward and simple, right, as far as that goes. We will have a centralized server. We call this the recovery point server. It could be an appliance, right? So if you have a UDP appliance, this would be the role of that appliance. It would be the recovery point server. You can install without a recovery point server in those smallest environments where you have 1 or 2 machines that you're backing up. You don't care about features like deduplication, replication, things like that. You could just do an agent-based approach and take this role of this server completely out, right? But The recovery point server is going to do a few things. It is going to handle deduplication, so it's going to give you the ability to dedupe at both the source and globally. It's an inline process. We'll speak a little bit more to it in a moment. It's going to give you the ability to replicate that data, the backup data, to another location, including not only an Arcserve cloud, but also Amazon or Azure or private clouds like Eucalyptus, things like that as well, with the ability to seed that data and all of that too, right? So that's the role of the recovery point server. I usually recommend that you have a recovery point server, right? Because also it offloads some of the processing and some other things that are going on as well. Also, when we talk to customers, about, backup strategies, right? What we see is a lot of customers are coming from a traditional backup where they are doing full backups, and then on top of that, they're doing incrementals throughout the week or differentials, right? And then at the end of that week, they're doing another full backup. The challenge with this is if you have a large amount of data, this full backup may span days. So when you were starting with a 5-day rotation or a 7-day rotation, now you're down to like a 4-day rotation, right? And I have seen that happen where customers have told me they do 3 incrementals and then they kick off their full backup because the full backup is taking so long to complete. So that's where infinite incrementals come in. Right, it's a direct, impact on the speed of your backups. You'll always start with a full backup. That will be the first backup that you ever do of a machine. After that first full backup, we'll kick off incrementals. These could be dailies, these could be weeklies, these could be monthlies. They could be backups throughout the day, every hour, every half hour. If your data chain supports it, every 15 minutes. Right? When you hit the top level of what you set for your retention for that type of backup, what we will do is we'll complete the next backup, and then we will take this full backup and we'll merge it into the oldest incremental, right? So and this happens at the recovery point server, by the way, right? So it's not that merge process doesn't impact your client servers, and now you're only doing incremental backups. And you're only grabbing the incremental block level changes at that, right? So inherently, snapshots are faster. Now we're only grabbing the change blocks, so it's even faster. Less data is going across the wire. That's going to impact that as well. And we see customers tell us their backups, take minutes. Honestly, I've had a customer tell me that their backups on servers that don't change a lot, right? They have a server that just backs up in a few seconds and they're done, right? Because it's pretty much a stagnant server, that particular server. Of course, your mileage may vary, right? It depends on the amount of change rate you have and those kind of things. I would never tell anybody that they can expect to get backups in seconds. Right, not realistically, but we do let you schedule down to every 15 minutes as part of the product, and we do some things to help you hit that schedule. We turn off cataloging until time of restore, unless you want to do it at time of backup. Right, we also take that merge process and let you schedule it for later in the day. Right, so again, you can hit a more aggressive backup schedule during your business hours and those kind of things. When you go in and view one of these incremental backups, what we show you is that incremental and everything below it that would make up a full. So although you're doing incremental and performing incremental backups, your benefit is going to be treated like a full backup. If you move it over to tape, you move it off to a disk, removable media, something like that, we move a full backup over. So you're going to get those quick incremental backups, and everything's going to be treated like it's a full backup from a user perspective and a restore perspective. Okay. We also take, and any time we have any downtime, any CPU idle time, we are checking that chain to make sure that there's data consistency, there's no issues, right, with the disk or anything like that. And then we can also schedule those tests in there as well. So if you want to schedule a test, you can do that too. I spoke a little bit about deduplication. What we perform is actually, our term is source-side global deduplication, right? We've expanded that to kind of just let you know it's an inline process, meaning that it occurs in memory. Right? So you do not need to set aside any storage in order to perform that deduplication. What we do is we start out with from the client perspective, the client machine, whether the workstation, server. When we go to back up that machine, we look at what's truly unique. So we do a source side deduplication first on there. So out of that backup, what is the truly unique blocks of data? And this is scalable. We work with 4, 8, 16, or 32K blocks of data. Once we've determined what the unique data is, we do not send the data across the wire yet. We send a hash file that gets generated right from that deduplication process to our recovery point server, and that recovery point server is going to compare that to the backup destination, do a global comparison, right? Because even that unique server, that the unique data that's on one server, maybe you've done you've done updates to all your servers, so all your servers are going to have very similar changes, some may be unique to each server. So what we'll do, of course, is we'll take a look at that, what you thought was global or what that machine thought was unique, and we'll take from a global perspective and say, okay, only send me this data because I have it from other machines or past backups or within the retention and all of that as well. When we take that data and replicate it to another location, right? So first off, we're going to reduce your bandwidth requirements here. We're also going to reduce your bandwidth requirements when you go to a remote site or remote site back to your main site or across the WAN to a cloud or MSP or whatever that might be. We'll go through that same deduplication process. So first we send the hash file. The hash file is compared remotely, and then we request the truly unique data. Right, so bandwidth utilization goes down, quite a bit with our product because we are performing that, and we do not need to set aside any storage or anything like that in order to perform that because it is occurring in memory. When we look at the agentless protection, it is for VMware, it is for Hyper-V, which we find to be the most two common hypervisors out there. It doesn't mean that we don't support things like KVM and Zen server. We would support them from an agent-based approach, so we can still back up those environments as far as all that goes. So just keep that in mind that we do support that. On VMware and Hyper-V, we're going to leverage their tools, right, to provide us a snapshot, and then we're going to back up that snapshot. So it does provide that agentless approach across that on VMware and Hyper-V. Still giving you the same granular restore capabilities, by the way, which is one of the things that I'll also show you when we take a look at the product. Local and remote virtual standby is the ability to take the backup, we convert it into a virtual machine on a host, okay, VMware or Hyper-V, and we have that monitor the source machine, and on a failure, or if you just wanted to fail over to the standby machine, we can bring up that machine, right? So you have your backup, you have your source machine, you have your backup, and then we convert it into a standby machine. The time to turn on and stand by this machine is the time it takes to fail over that machine. So it's a very nice solution as far as that goes. It does mean that you're going to, have, some storage set aside in order to have these standby machines. So you have to keep that in effect. But we haven't, that's not the end of the story. We do have some other solutions that will help you with that as well. We'll talk about that in a moment. Instant VM would be that solution, right? The instant virtual machine where we can take and give you the capability to, instead of creating that virtual machine, give you the ability to emulate that the backup is a virtual machine. So on instant virtual machine, you don't have the hit that you would normally have of storage. You lose a little bit of performance because you're using emulation, but you also are able to granularly go back to specific backups that you want to spin up as well. This is a great tool if you're hit with something like ransomware and you have an aggressive RPO, which I always tell people they should if they can afford it. And I'm not talking about a dollars and cents afford. I'm talking about from an impact on your machines, right? Backup as frequently as possible so that then you can turn around, and if you do get any type of corruption or you do get any type of ransomware, you can just bring up a VM, and be back in business, and as I like to say, thumb your nose at the people that infected you as far as that goes. So that's the instant VM functionality. in a lot of cases, you would use both. And the great thing about our product is, you're going to have access to these tools, right? There's different levels to the product, and I would never start looking at anything less than the one that comes with Instant VM, because it's that valuable a tool and a resource. Instant VMware Recovery is a tool that's on Linux only right now. Currently, we hope to port this over to Windows. It's the only feature that we don't have across platform, and it gives you the capability to do a remote bare metal restore to a machine. You don't have to have access to it. You boot that Linux machine with live CD. You can specify the IP or the MAC address when it comes online, and then the console will be looking for that to come online, and when it does, we'll start streaming the data to that machine and doing the restore. Users can access that before it's even actually restored. So as it's being imaged, a user goes to access data, we'll fetch that data and put that data on the machine for them, right? So as they go to access it. So it's pretty slick, it's pretty nice. It does give you that remote bare metal restore capability. As far as that goes, send somebody an ISO image, a live CD to boot off of, and when they boot off of that, it comes up and we're watching for it, and we start streaming the restore to it automatically. So that's pretty nice. Full system high availability is the capability to take and do continuous data replication. So if you think of features like virtual standby, instant virtual machine, they're tied to a backup policy. So I'm backing up every hour, I'm backing up once a day, I'm backing up every 30 minutes, I'm backing up every 15 minutes, something like that. Well, in some cases, you have critical servers that you can't afford 15 minutes of downtime. Or maybe you could, but unfortunately your data change doesn't support backing it up that frequently. That's where the full system high availability product comes into play. So I said product, but it's a feature of the product, of UDP, right? So it's just another tab in UDP that you would go and you enable this, and you could enable continuous replication to an offline VM, right? That's ready to turn on and ready to take the place of the source machine. You can have automated testing tied into this. So we have a feature called Assured Recovery, which would take and bring up that virtual machine on a different network, make sure things like Exchange, SQL, Oracle, things like that mount, right? Processes start and all those services are running, and then we're going to go ahead and bring that down with a pass-fail. Okay, it works. Okay. On top of that, right, we never stop replicating changes over. They just spool over, and once that machine's down, we go ahead and apply those changes. So you can schedule this DR test as frequently as you would like to, daily if you wanted to, so that you knew if you ever had to do a failure or a failover, that machine's going to come up and it's going to work. Right? We've never impacted the production site during that test or any of that as well. We do have, a nice set of reporting tools within the product that are going to show you things about like the amount of data that you're protecting, what your deduplication ratios are, what your backup size trending, what that looks like, and different alerts and different things like that as well. And we also are going to, we have an open schema to our database. We use SQL Express for our database by default. If you have more than 500 machines, maybe you want to go over to a SQL server or something like that. But typically, SQL Express is good for most customers out there. We'll provide that database schema for you, and you can use tools like SQL Report Writer or Crystal Report, something like that, so you can query, if we don't have the reports that you want, you can query those. And I've always asked customers to share that with us, because then we share that with development, and if we have enough customers doing it, then we'll go through and we'll make that kind of request from them to add those reports to there. Several reports were added in this release along that kind of concept. On the subject of our appliances, we recently came out with our 8000 series appliance. This is an update to our appliances. What's nice about these is we've kind of simplified things. We have 4 appliances. I'm not going to go through them one at a time. I'm going to bring them all up on here, and we'll kind of look at them all at once. The 8100, for instance, starts at 4 terabytes and it scales up. So we could put a 2 terabyte disk shelf in there to bring it up to 6 terabytes, and you'll see that that kind of goes across the board, right? So we range from 4 terabytes all the way up to 80 terabytes, and when we talk about 80 terabytes, we're talking about 80 terabytes usable, right? So it's really probably about 78.8 usable out of there, right, as far as that goes. Now, that doesn't mean that excuse me there. It doesn't mean that, if you buy a 32 terabyte, right, that there's no way to get it back up to 80 terabytes or something like that. We are going to offer the ability to do upgrades to these appliances so that, at time of, we want to size it correctly, right? We're going to use a sizing tool in order to size it correctly. But once that sizing is completed, then we're going to, if you grow or something like that, we are going to add the ability to add shelves and things like that. These will have top ends to them as far as that goes. And we're also going to have a discussion with you. Do you want to perform any on-appliance DR? If so, we need to plan for that as well. And then we can always go out to cloud or something like that too on top of that. All right, so the key features, in the 6.5 release, we did expand our support for hardware-based snapshots. My experience is about every 6 months. Don't hold me to it, but so far about every 6 months, we've expanded that list, right? So we expanded our support for Nimble, right? So today we support NetApp, Nimble, and HP 3PAR. HP 3PAR is new. We've expanded the Nimble support to include the support for not only VMware but Hyper-V as well, and then also we support all those with NetApp and HP too. We added the ability to back up email, right? On Office 365, we've always been able to back up email, but now we've expanded it to, Exchange Online. We've had quite a few customers come to us and they want better, Microsoft's great about, having that data available and having that Exchange server available for you, but customers have wanted long-term retention of that data that's up there and the ability to granularly restore, an email or something like that as well, and that's what we can provide. Okay. Same thing for being able to support SIF shares or UNC Paths. We can do that as well. And of course, we support the latest, from VMware, from Windows, those kind of things as well as some Red Hat and Oracle distributions there too. We've expanded our support in AWS and in the Amazon cloud. So now not only can we back up data to the Amazon cloud, but we can also perform some DR up to the Amazon cloud as well. If we're going to do that DR capability and spin up those virtual standbys up there, then we do need it to be an EC2 instance, right? We can also protect EC2 instances. I've had recently a couple calls where folks had machines up in EC2 and they wanted to back them up either to another EC2 instance or another cloud instance or back on-prem, right? So we can definitely do that as well. We've added a feature called Assured Recovery. It's a task, and it allows you to do very similar to the Assured Recovery that's in high availability. It's an automated testing feature where it'll mount the backup of the VM. Well, I shouldn't say of the VM. It'll mount the backup, right? If it's a virtual machine, we can if we want to mount it as a virtual machine, let me state that right, we can definitely do that. We can also just mount the disk and run check disk against it as well. We can also take and do SLA reporting now, where you can say, I want to be able, for these critical servers, I need to be able to restore a file in so many minutes, restore an entire server, bare metal restore, or a virtual machine restore in so many minutes, so many hours, whatever you want to set for that, and we can monitor those and let you know whether or not you're hitting your SLAs on those. And then we also have an RPO report, where it will show you that, your oldest recovery points, your newest recovery points, machines, that you've added to the console and that you haven't backed up yet there either. Okay. When we look at the Office 365 online protection, I did kind of hit on this. What we're doing is we're taking and we're backing up that data, bringing it back on-prem, giving you the ability to restore things like emails, calendars, contact, tasks, things like that, and selectively kind of what you want to do that. You can actually exclude some folders out of there too if you want to exclude data. Not maybe they have a junk folder, right? We don't want to back that up, right? As far as that goes, so you can exclude that, right? The backup would go to a non-deduplicated data store, and then we would take and we would replicate that to a deduplicated data store, right? So it would land non-deduplicated, but we can quickly move it over to a deduplicated data store, so you wouldn't have that big storage hit as far as that goes. Same kind of process when we look at, UNC shares and backing up UNC shares, whether or not they're Windows or Linux, right, on those type of NASs, we can take and access that data and we can back it up to, to the recovery point server. There's a proxy here that we're going to use in order to do that. The central management console is going to talk to both of these, right? A lot of times you'll have this central management console actually on the recovery point server, and believe it or not, you may even make this proxy on the recovery point server. So although we show it expanded as 3 machines, really a lot of times you'll have these 3 machines all on one server as far as that goes. Same story as with the Office 365. It'll land non-deduplicated, right? Because we don't have the ability to do deduplication on that side, right? From a share perspective, but then we can go through and then move it over to a deduplicated data store, so it doesn't need to stay undeduplicated. When we look at another big request from customers is the capability to back up storage containers in VMware. Okay, so being able to, as you create a container, you're backing it up. Maybe you're excluding some VMs in that container if you want to do that as well. And then you take and you create some new VMs, you throw them in that container, and they're already going to be backed up or added to that backup policy. That assured recovery testing, I went through this pretty well there, but what it's going to do is it's going to generally use that instant VM technology that we spoke of before, but automate that process. So once the backup's done, or whenever your assured recovery schedule kicks off, we're going to take and we're going to mount that backup as a VM. If you want to do it under the instant VM capability, we're then going to make sure that it comes online. That's always important, right? And then run any scripts that you want to run or anything like that as well as part of that process. Okay. And then you could do the same thing, but even if it wasn't a VM, or I should say, even if it's not an entire machine, we can then mount it as a disk, and then we can do things like check disk, things like that as well as part of that process. So it does give you the ability to go in and know not only will that machine come online, but can you do anything with it once it is online. Hardware snapshot support, kind of just focusing in here on how easy it is once you've added that. That's one of the things I'll try to show you here relatively quickly within the console is, we just go through and specify the IP address, the permissions to connect to that piece of hardware, and then once we're done that, all we have to do is within the plans select, use hardware snapshots wherever possible, and we'll leverage that going forward. The last kind of functionality is a feature that we've had for a while. It's called copy recovery points. Where we've expanded this is now we can copy these up to cloud. So before, if we wanted to move data to the cloud, we could either move it to recovery point server in a cloud location, right? Which means you'd have to have, CPU cycles, things like that, I/O times up in the cloud. So in Amazon, it means Azure, right? Or not, excuse me, in Amazon, it means EC2, right? As far as that goes, right? In Azure, we have to have, an actual VM up there running with our recovery point servers software on there. So that's what it meant before. Now we could always copy files or things like that, but if we wanted to send the entire backup up there, we had to go that other route. backup. So now what we can do is we can use this copy recovery point feature, and we can then go to like dumb storage, like S3, as far as that goes. So go to a bucket instead of have an actual server. It can't perform any DR or anything off of that backup, but it does go and it puts the data up there. So if you don't want to pay for EC2, you want to go more like a S3 instance or something like that, you can leverage that. We'll just back up to that storage as far as that goes. All right. So what we'll do now is I left us about 20 minutes. I want to leave a few minutes to talk about, if you will, to talk about answer questions. I do see a few questions out there as far as that goes. So I'm going to try to go through about 20 minutes overview of the product. This will be kind of high level, right? I do want to make sure that I don't bore you too much with getting down in the weeds, but if you want to see more information or a custom demo to your environment and your questions, just let us know, and we can always perform a much better demo of the product for you there as well. All right, so I've gone ahead and logged into the utility here. So I happen to be on Internet Explorer, Chrome, IE, Firefox, Edge, any of those to access and log in, right? And we usually want some type of domain, right, account in order to log in so that we can perform the snapshots and those kind of things as well. It's going to have to be in the backup administrator account as well. So if you make your own custom account, those are the two things to make sure. This does have some administrative rights. It is in the backup administrators group, as far as that goes. When you log into UDP, the first thing you're going to log into is the dashboard. I will spend more time talking about the dashboard than you'll probably ever spend on the dashboard, just to let you know. It'll show you the state of your backups, right? We see here that we have some machines that have not been backed up, and this is just machines I've added to the console, but I've not added them to any type of backup plans, anything like that. We, of course, have a lot of successful backups, and we have a failure. Right, so if we want to see what that failure is, we can easily select that failure, click on it, and it'll take me directly to that machine, and I can go ahead and we see the last backup result was a failure, and I can go right into the logs from here, and what it's going to show me is that this is a Linux machine, okay, and that we've forced VSS snapshots on it, and VSS doesn't run on Linux, so therefore it failed. Okay, so it's actually a failure that I wanted because I was recording some videos on reporting, and you have to have failures when you do that. But it's good to have here because we can quickly see that, and if I did need to open a support ticket or something like that, I can go right up here, export these logs, and then when I open my support ticket, I can attach those logs. So not only am I opening my ticket, I'm already providing the logs for them as well, so they can, when they give me a call, they already know what's going on, and they already have a head start, right? Because I don't know if you're like me and you've been on any support calls, various companies, one of the first things that they do is they start taking a look at the logs, right? So you can take that step out of it as far as that goes, right? So we're gonna come back over here, reset this, get rid of this filter. We're going to go back over to our dashboard now. The other report is our storage report. On an appliance, we're going to have some thresholds here, 85, 90, 95% thresholds that we'll start to see, hey, you're getting close to filling this up. It's going to report on the actual data storage being taken up, the restorable data and the raw data. Right, so you can kind of understand, if I were to, if this were to be non-deduplicated, how much space would it be taken up there as well. The other two main reports here, the RTO report and RPO report. I'll start with the RPO report. It's probably the least amazing, out of all of them. So the RPO report is going to show us the age of the oldest recovery points, the newest recovery points, what's the total recovery points across everything that we're doing. It's going to give us a good understanding of that. You see here we do have some machines, again, that haven't been backed up, and it's reporting on that as well. The RTO report, this is showing us, I've set an SLA profile, so I've said, and we'll go into that really quick, but it's, am I hitting those SLAs that we have set? And this assured recovery test, again, is part of the SLA, so it's showing that, I've met it on 2 of my machines, but 1 of my machines I have not, right? So we do a little investigation to see what that. Now that doesn't mean my shared recovery test failed. It just didn't run as quickly, right, as we'd wanted it to, right? So that's what SLAs are all about. The resource tab, which I went to now, is where really we're going to do 90% of everything we do in UDP, right? This is where we're going to go in and import machines. This is where we're going to go in and create our backup plans, do our restores, manage our storage. We're going to do everything pretty much from here, perform our disaster recovery, all of that from here. I'm going to kind of go in really quick what it would look like to add machines to the console. We can bring them in from Active Directory. We can import them by qualified domain name, IP address. We could bring them in through the hypervisor, through VMware, Hyper-V. So all different ways that we can import them. And really all you're really doing is creating a list of machines, right? You can also import shares that you want to protect, import, like if you have Office 365, import mailboxes, those kind of things too. I'm going to jump all the way to the bottom. It's not usually something that I show, but I mean, this is pretty cool. Here's my SLA profiles. So if we go into, and I already have one created here, so we'll just, modify this one that we already have. And here's where we can go in, name that whatever I want to, set different SLA profiles on different capabilities, like, the assured recovery testing, bare metal restore testing, file level restores, and move different machines into those profiles. So maybe I have different profiles for different levels of machines. As I start to lose my voice, I apologize. Okay, so once we have those profiles selected, right, the assured recovery test is automated, so anytime we run the assured recovery test, it's going to report back to it whether or not we're performing this within our 30 minutes. I haven't ran any since I adjusted it to 30 minutes. That's why I have that one that has not met that time frame, right? Anytime I do a bare metal restore or anything that I set a time frame to, it's going to report that back under that SLA profile that we're either meeting it or not meeting it, right? So that gives us that capability. Once we have that list created, right, we can go in. I kind of want to show you this because, there are companies out there that, that they protect physical and virtual environments, but the way they do it is different, right? So, for instance, when we look at backing up, and I'll just create a new plan here, right? We name our plan, we choose the type of backup that we want to do. I'm going to start with a agent-based backup, okay? So, or actually I clicked on Agentless, didn't I? So we're going to do agent-based Windows there. We'll start here. I'm going to have a source, a destination, schedule, and an advanced tab, which is notifications, those kind of things that we go through. Under the source, I would just go through, select add, and bring in from machines I've already added to the console, or if I hadn't added them yet, I could go ahead and add them at that time, right? I'm going to import those machines in. If this were to be an agentless, the only difference to this process is really that we're going to have a proxy server, which a lot of times is going to be your backup server. It really kind of depends on what you want it to be. It's going to be a machine that the host can see. Okay, it can be physical, it could be virtual, could be the backup server. It doesn't really matter. And it's going to have a UDP agent on it. Okay, that's going to be the requirements for that proxy. Right, so we're just going to go through. There's my backup server, and then when we add, we're going to select nodes from the console, and now it's only going to present to me the virtual machines, right? So I would choose what virtual machines I want to add over, and then we're going to have a couple rules down here based on the way we create the snapshot, the way that the snapshot is transported, but it's really just two rules on whether or not you're running VMware or you're running Hyper-V as far as that goes. Okay. Once we've created that, everything else from this point on, our destination, which would be a recovery point server, our schedule, when we want to perform the backups, daily, weekly, monthly, a combination of those, the retention of those, that's all going to really be the same, right? So give you that, you don't have to have learn a different interface, a different console, anything like that. And even within our product, right, it looks pretty much the same doing it. There will be little caveats here and there. Like for instance, on virtual machines, I can take those backups that I'm doing, and as I run those backups, once I'm complete, I can mount them, run check disk against them. So this is even another way to verify your backups and those kind of things too. So it definitely gives you, a little bit more capability to the testing side of things, right? I like to say never trust a backup, always verify, verify, verify. Right. From an advanced standpoint, do we want to enable hardware snapshots? Do we want to truncate Exchange or SQL logs, email alerts, notifications, any scripting, all of those kind of things within there? All right. What I want to do now, I showed you a little bit of what it looks like to create backup plans. What I want to do now is let's go through, and I'm going to show you some disaster recovery. Right. So here is my vCenter server, and we'll use that as my server that I'll push out to. So I'm just going to pick on this bottom server. It's the one I always pick on for some reason. We're going to go ahead and just right-click on it, and I'm going to choose the option to create an instant VM. Right. So I'm going to go through. It's going to automatically say, okay, here's my backup server. There's the data store that's backing up to. And if I expand this to be the last 7 days, right? There's all my different backups, so let's just choose the one that's in the middle. Select next. My data is encrypted, so we're going to choose the encryption key here. Make sure you type it right, that always helps as well. That's how you know it's an actual live demo, right? So then we're going to go through and we're going to choose the hypervisor. I'm going to pick VMware on this. And there's my vCenter server, my management server. I only have one host, so mine's going to be quite simple. It's going to bring up that host, select the host, select next. You'll notice this is 4 steps, right? So I've already done 2 of the 4 steps. In the 3rd step, we're going to choose the server that we want to do the recovery, right? That's going to run the emulation, right? By default, it's my backup server, my recovery point server. I could offload that to another server, right, that has the NFS server role enabled and has a UDP agent on it. Of course, it has to see the backups. It has to be able to see the host. Select next. We're going to give it a prefix in vCenter, so that's what we'll come up with. We could change that if we wanted to. We're going to give it a prefix or a description in our console in case we were doing multiples of these. We're going to then choose a folder on that recovery server that we want to store any changes on. And if we go into vCenter and look at the data store, that machine that we're going to create, you'll see that it points to this folder as the data store for that. We'll also choose the resources that we want to give that machine. Do we want to connect an adapter to it? It'll pull up the same IP settings, which you can change. You can change the host name, those kind of things as well on it. Once you're done, we're going to go ahead and select Finish. We're going to, in our case, boot this machine now. And then if I come back over here, there's that machine that already got created, relatively quick. And if I go in and let's open the console, in my environment, it'll take about 4 to 5 minutes, maybe 3 to 4 minutes to actually boot this machine up and have it presented to everybody. Okay. Depending on what's running on it, what applications, those kind of things, it may take a little bit longer. I've been to customer sites and it may be quicker, right? So it really depends on the resources behind it. We'll come back over to it. I don't want to sit here and stare at a blank screen. The other restore capabilities, again, we want to keep it simple. So we'll pick on our domain controller. We'll go ahead and choose our restore option. And once we're within this, now I'll be able to go in and choose, do I want to restore individual files and folders? If it's a virtual machine, do I want to recover a virtual machine back into a virtual environment? If it's Active Directory, which this one happens to be, I can perform granular Active Directory restores. All of these restores are always going to look the same. I'm going to have a calendar. I'm going to have when did I perform the backup, and then choose what I want to back up, and then go into there, right? In the case of Active Directory, it's going to explore my domain information, then it's going to bring up my Active Directory information. I can drill down into the objects, the attributes that I want to restore, do authoritative, non-authoritative restores, those kind of things as well. So there's my Arcserve domain. Here's my users. I could restore at this level. This is something I always say, but I hope you never have to restore at this level, just because that means you have a lot of problems going on, right? So we can go down, and if I do pick on users, we can choose a specific user, right, and restore the whole user, or attributes out of that user's account, right? Of course, we don't have to do users. We could do any of these different objects up here that we need to do the restores at. Okay, our restore options are always going to be original, alternate location. In the case of Active Directory, it has to be the original location, and you do have to actually select something, right? I didn't select anything, so there we go. And then in the case of Active Directory, since it's only the original location, how do you want to handle conflicts is really going to be our options there as far as that goes, right? The last kind of restore to show you before we hop back over, I'm doing just about what I want to on time. The other restore that comes in very useful for people is just being able to go in through Explorer and browse out to the backup destination. Mine happens to be another disk on this particular machine. And I can just go in, right-click, switch to recovery point view. It changes the icon. It lets UDP know that we're working in here, so don't delete any data. So no merge processes would be run. I can take and I can find the backup I want to restore from, drill down into it, find a file, a folder. It will prompt me for security purposes. So let's go ahead and provide that. And now I can see my volumes. I can keep drilling down into these, to my files, my folders, those kind of things. If I needed to, drag and drop it wherever I wanted to do those restores. Once I'm done, right, I'm just going to click back a few times. We're going to get back to the folder view, right-click on it, switch it back to its Windows normal view, changes the icon. UDP, as it runs merge, is going to come across that machine, and it's going to go ahead and run the merge process. If we forget to do this step, right, there's notifications within UDP to let you know that the merge process was skipped. I guess there is one last restore to show. It's always a value to show, and that's going to be the Exchange granular restore, the ability to go in and restore mailboxes, counter, contacts, tasks, you name it, pretty much out of Exchange. We're going to give you that capability to do that granular restore of that information in there. If we go back to this machine, it's almost up. So I think yep, there we are, right on time. Right, so then I could log into this machine and start using it. If I just wanted to test it, I didn't connect it to a network, so I could log into it, make sure everything's working and all of that as well. Now I'm right on time for my 10-minute mark for questions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through and just move us here to the questions section. But by all means, if you have any other questions, anything you want to see, please let us know. We can set up either a custom demo for you, or we also have some great material out on our Arcserve YouTube site or our Arcserve website as well. So videos, things like that too. So we do have a number of questions in here. So we'll take some time to go ahead and answer these. The first one from David, can you send backups to multiple locations? You can, right? So we would have to send it first to one location, and then we could replicate it to another location, or maybe even in the case it may be multiple locations on the same recovery point server. Right, there may be some instances where there's reasons to do that, like back up to non-deduped data store and a deduped data store, things like that. Or maybe you want to change the block size because you're going to move it off to tape, right? So there's some reasons why you would do that, David. So we would go to A to B to C, right? And that area, C could be cloud if you want it to be. It could be another data store on the same server, another location. So we can definitely do that. It could, and I'm saying, it could be another data store. It could even be another type of media. It could be, for instance, a tape media, removable media, something like that, disk media, USB drives. We can do that as well. I have a question here from Mary about what's my opinion on using REFS instead of NTFS for volumes that contain VMs and SQL databases. I know that we support it. I actually don't run into it very often, Mary, there, but I know that we support it as far as that goes. And that's kind of where my knowledge of it, since I haven't ran into it that much in my user base that I've worked with. But I know that we do support it. Right. So great question here from Everton, right, asking us if our product would work with their existing Exagrid storage appliances. And I'm going to expand this question, right? So not only Exagrid, but let's talk about data domain, other appliances that also do on-appliance deduplication. If you've made that investment, right, on a purpose-built appliance that does deduplication as well, far be it from me to tell you not to use their deduplication. Since our deduplication is at the source and it's global, it's reducing not only the overall data reduction, but also your network utilization as well. Okay. I prefer our deduplication. We will still work with other vendors out there and let them handle the deduplication. You have to kind of understand the way things are going to work, right? So we're expecting certain responses that the data has been written. Right, so as long as we're getting back that the data was written, right, we'll send it non-deduplicated, let them dedupe it, and as long as they're, the IOs and everything is fine, everything's fine for us. When we go to replicate that data, that's when the Exagrid or the data domain, if we use our replication, is going to present it back out to us in a non-deduplicated format, and then we're going to replicate it and use more bandwidth. If you have two data domains, two Exagrids, and you leverage their replication, right, then that may not be a concern for you as far as that goes. And we do have customers that do that, right? So I'm not going to tell you if you made an investment like that not to leverage it. But if you haven't made that investment yet, absolutely, I think the way ours works and the benefits you get from the deduplication that's within the product, is pretty valuable. So I like our deduplication there. So I got a question from Nelson here. What is the function of the proxy when performing agentless backups? This is a function that's required by their APIs, right? In the case of VMware, right? That you present the data out to a proxy server. That proxy server is just going to be a landing zone where they're going to present that data to, right? We have to have that proxy, right? VMware is going to require that we have a proxy. It's if you will, it's a landing zone. It's a first step. I have seen quite a few people that they make their backup server the proxy, right? A proxy server typically can handle about 10 simultaneous VMs being backed up too. So as you scale out, you may consider having multiple proxies, and in really large environments I've seen that happen, right, where you have multiple proxy servers so that you can back up more data at once and those kind of things. Of course, you're also going to make your backup server probably a little bit beefier to handle more streams of data, things like that as well. But you can scale that out, right, and that is kind of how that is managed as far as that goes. Okay, so I got a question here about at a high level, can you talk about our integration with the Stratus hypervisor? Okay, I do work a little bit with Stratus, so if this is the Stratus that I'm thinking of, right? Typically, what we see with Stratus is they're a high availability company, the company that I'm thinking about. Okay, and and they have a really cool tool, right? A very, very awesome, high availability tool. UDP, if we talked about UDP and Stratus, would provide a backup solution. Okay, so not only would you have your availability, but then UDP would add on top of it your ability to have long-term retention of your data, right? As far as that goes. we could also take a look at, the high availability solution and that too, which, when we look at the high availability solution, there's no limitation for distance, right? So that's nice there, but it also is, it's not the same kind of response probably as Stratus and all that. That's why Stratus has the limitation of distance, is because they're, how many milliseconds and things like that. So, it's two different kind of approaches to it. Stratus is going to give you probably, more nines if I had to guess about it as far as that goes from an availability standpoint. Probably have time for one more question, and that would be, does any hardware need to be changed for upgrading from version 5 to version 6.5? Excellent question. Most likely no. Okay, from a standpoint of features and functions, things that we've added, most likely no. Right, I haven't seen any instances where we've told customers that they need to be able to support that. Right, we do have a lot of other good questions out here, things about like VNX and data domain, which I imagine, from I'd have to read David's earlier question on here, but we do have like several other questions. We'll definitely answer these questions and get them back to you, answered. And if we've just unfortunately ran out of time, but we'll definitely get those questions. I do see a question about encryption, and I do want to address that. Our data is encrypted in motion and at rest. So if you turn on encryption, it's in motion and at rest. I think that's a pretty important question there. So we'll throw that out real quick as kind of a final wrap up. But, I'm going to turn it back over to Mary. It's been my pleasure talking to you today, and you all have a great day.
Thank you, Stacy, and thanks so much for fitting in all those questions, as many as you could. As I mentioned before, we recorded today's session, and so that will be sent out later today or tomorrow in an email, so keep an eye out for that. If you have any additional questions, please reach out to us at www.arcserve.com. On the site, you can download a trial, you can call us directly, or you can chat online with one of our reps. And with that, we will wrap up today's presentation. Thanks again for attending today, and have a great rest of your day.